Okay, everybody, Michael Phoenix here with Bryan Tuk, who came up with something new and completely different for the city of Allentown this year. I don't think a jazz fest has ever been, to the best of my knowledge, has ever been done in Allentown, at least not since 1971 when I was born. Um, what gave you the idea to do a jazz fest here in the city?
Well, you're right. This will be the first one that I think has ever happened in Allentown. There's definitely the blues, brews, and barbecues event, and a couple other things like that in town here. But we've never, I don't think we've had a multi-day uh, music festival, right in the downtown. So, actually, this idea evolved about, I'd say, over a year ago with the Reverend Gregory Edwards, who has a congregation on Ninth Street, and is an excellent saxophone player in his
Okay.
own right. Frank DeBusolo, who's a jazz guitarist, who I perform with regularly, and the three of us kind of started kicking around the idea of, could this be pulled off and done in a world class way? So we talked about it a little bit, and as time went on, the idea kept hanging around, and we started putting a little bit more detail on the plan, and it really took on a life of its own. I would say about 8 months ago, and we, I formed a nonprofit corporation, constituted a small board of directors, and once we had that group of people together, that's when we really started to map out, operationally what we wanted to do and how we were going to do it.
Okay. Now, before I get into my follow-up question, I apologize. Even my belated wife always told me, she said, I do my best thinking on the fly. What kind of challenges were there, considering this is the first jazz festival for the city? Like, was it hard to approach the city about it, or maybe Miller Symphony Hall or anything? Were there some serious challenges involved?
Well, you can look at things two ways, I guess. You can look at things as a challenge or, as an opportunity. The fact that it had never been done before, we've never really looked at as a burden or an obstacle. We've actually looked at it as an opportunity, because we thought, we being the board and me and some other people, we thought that if we could put a good, high quality group of performers together and involve the right business partners in terms of, the Allentown Symphony will be the site for the weekend events, and align ourselves with some sponsors that are leaders in the business community, because to mount an event like this, you absolutely need, you need corporate support. It's just the way it is. Unless you have a group of people that are able to fund it themselves, which is a pretty tall order considering the magnitude of what this is growing into.
Street terms, you need some serious cash
Well, yeah.
I mean, point blank.
Right, straight up. There's no other way to say it. So we were, we have a great relationship with Sheila Evans, the executive director of the symphony. We identified a weekend where the entire building was dark, which is unusual. Usually they have a concert on a Saturday or on a Sunday, or both days sometimes. And for us to find a weekend where we could hold events Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we just kind of got lucky in that regard. So we were able to reserve the hall for that entire time period. And by virtue of just knowing people in the jazz community, I started making a couple of calls to people who were friendly to us, about whether they'd be interested in performing, so that we could start building our artist roster with some known quantity,
Right.
people who are known quantities. Al Ches from the Late Night with David Letterman band, who I know through a mutual friend. Al and I aren't really tight, but we know a lot of common people.
Okay.
Eric Mintel from the Doylestown area, who performs up here regularly and has a following. Same deal. Eric and I knew each other through mutual friends, and that's how, we got him booked. And, it just started with small steps. You add a couple of performers, and then you try to go out and get a few more. You bring those in, and it just keeps growing if you're methodical about it. And we just tried to be as businesslike and as methodical as we could about how we put this together and how we're going to promote it to everybody and all of that.
That couldn't have been easy considering that there really wasn't a template for this.
Well, again...
other than other music festivals in the area.
Well, that's true. I mean, we've had, Reading's got a big jazz festival, the Berks Jazz Fest.
Right.
Which is one of the bigger ones on the East Coast.
Okay.
And we've all been to that at some point or another. It's been around for 25 years. It's a week-long...
Wow.
It's a week-long event. So, we had that and some other festivals around the country that we've looked at to see, what elements from those programs did we like, what did we think would work locally, and then we just kind of, incorporated elements from other festivals that we thought were interesting. So, for example, we decided we wanted to have a feature of the festival where there would be an official art piece done by a local artist. So we contacted Ann Schlegel, who's a painter whose studio is literally in the 2 blocks away from here. And Ann had done work for the Dime restaurant and for City Center and some of the new properties that are going up. And our relationship with Ann now has been fantastic because she's given us a great piece that we're going to unveil on March 27th. And the people that have seen it have been really blown away by it because we selected Ann because she has a really strong tie to Allentown. She's lived here, I think, her entire life and worked here her entire life. And she did graphic design for Cigars International and Mayfair. I mean, she's done this job for other festivals. So that's kind of our methodology. We want someone with a connection to the area that also has done high-level work in the discipline that we're trying to get them to work for us.
Right.
So that's a good example. So, we'll have, in addition to all the bands that are going to perform, there'll be a poster that Ann releases, and hopefully we're partnering with her, so if we can sell some posters, proceeds go to Ann, and we can support her.
Okay.
We can support her work, we're really excited. There's a lot of things we're going to unveil. We're going to have a series of announcements coming up. The last one will be March 27th. So if you guys watch the Facebook page, you'll be totally up to speed.
Okay. So there's a lot of surprises in the pipe yet.
Yeah. I think we have about 4 or 5 announcements that we're going to start.
Okay.
Start
Good.
today.
Now, I'm actually going to do this in 2 parts just because we live in 2015 and people's attention spans are very short now, which is the reason why I also do video. And this is going to be a good lead-in into part 2. Now, recently I read an article that jazz is now the least popular, or at least one of the least popular genres in the entire country. I'll be honest with you, I know nothing about jazz. I saw June Thomas one time do jazz, and that was it. So this is actually completely new territory for myself also. Going back to the original question, with it being that, as far as the popularity of it that has dropped that low, this must have been, you must have been really excited to try and, it's almost like not really doing the impossible, but it's like, okay, it's never been done here.
Let's pick the hardest genre to try to sell while we're at it.
Yeah.
Now, I know the article that you're referring to, and I think, there's been so much, when you look at the hip hop world, the method of collaboration that goes on among hip hop artists, where you may have 3 or 4 on one single. That has kind of bled over into other musical styles.
Okay.
So I think with respect to that article, things that are categorized as jazz, whatever that definition is in that article, demographically is probably the smallest.
Okay.
But when you've got crossover artists that are jazz people that are singing with an R&B artist, well, is that R&B? It just depends on how you define the terms. So what I do is I look, whenever you read an article like that, you look around, I think, and look at the career arcs of a lot of popular artists, like Rod Stewart. He released a couple albums of standards from the 40s and 50s. Lady Gaga's collaboration with Tony Bennett, for instance. And the reaction that a guy like Harry Connick gets when he performs locally, and he's got the TV show and everything like that. However, people come to see him because he's good, and he's clearly a jazz guy. He's not R&B or anything else. So I think that article, I don't know if I agree with its point, but in terms of what we're going to do. Stylistically, we wanted to really push the envelope. So we're going to have some big band stuff that everybody's familiar with. We're going to have some, quartets, saxophone quartets, and that the instrumentation is bass, drums, piano, and sax. Very straightforward, traditional kind of stuff. But when you get to the weekend schedule, we wanted to really become the game with running a festival is becoming a curator of something, of an idea or a style. And where we're trying to go is a very modern, forward-looking version of this musical style. So Friday night we have Al Chez and the Brothers of Funk. Al's a jazz trumpet player, no doubt about it. But his band covers, Led Zeppelin and Golden Earring and a lot of rock and roll repertoire that they've molded into a big band format. And they rock. I mean, they're fantastic. Saturday night, Jojo Meyer and his band Nerve, he's a jazz drummer by training, and he grew up in that style. But his band is very much, electronica, almost EDM. I mean, if he could add a DJ into that band and it would completely fit. So, like the instrumentation of that group is bass, drum set, and a guy doing sound effect. He's got a soundboard and loops and a lot of electronic stuff that is almost more in the dance world than anything else. And then Sunday night we have Oz Noy, who's probably the #1 session guitarist in New York right now, and he's bringing with him Will Lee and Anton Fig from the Late Night with David Letterman band as his rhythm section. Not too shabby.
No.
And he's a rock guitarist, but he plays with jazz techniques. So you'll hear a trio that sounds like it's a blues rock outfit. But when he goes to solo over some of these structures, he's bringing in a lot of jazz sensibilities and techniques and improvisation that you would not get if it was like Kenny Lane Shepherd or John Mayer or somebody. Not that there's anything wrong with those guys; they're very good. Right. But like if you listen to Kenny Lane Shepherd play, he's more of a traditional blues.
The only song I'm familiar with him is Blue on Black. So yeah, it's.
Right, exactly. But when you listen to the Oz Noy trio, it's a completely unique animal. There really is nothing like this combination of styles that he has put together. So, I think those three groups that when people ask us like what our style or what our sensibility is about things, we have to figure out a label to put on this because we're not really sure what to call it either. Other than we want to, we really want to push the envelope and go forward. We don't, you won't probably ever see us bring in like the Glenn Miller Orchestra or any, really over nostalgia acts. I mean, it's our position is we want to drive the art form forward. So,
You just answered the first question of part 2 of the interview right there, because I'll get into that, but you pretty much just answered the first question of part 2. So we're going to take a short break so you can get a little more of your coffee, mandatory morning drink, and do a quick wrap up in part 2, and hopefully this will attract more people to it.
Okay, thank you, sir.